Usually on this channel, we are looking at the logic behind Nintendo's decisions and the facts on the ground, but this video takes a step outside the usual and looks at how Nintendo relates to superstition. Clearly, when there are so many hard-nosed business factors at play, superstition will never play anything but a small peripheral role in Nintendo's decision-making, but that's not to say that it should be dismissed completely. Human beings are not strictly logical, and from its earliest days, luck has been important to Nintendo, and at times through its history, they have gone out of their way to court it. So, how has superstition shaped Nintendo, and does superstitious thinking still linger at the company today? Please like, subscribe, and settle in, as in this video, we're going to explore Nintendo and superstition. Firstly, let's recap how we've seen Nintendo be superstitious in the past. Nintendo made their name after all selling Hanafuda cards, a game heavily luck-based, and the word Nintendo can be interpreted as leave luck to heaven, though in 1955 the New York Times noted that the name gives them the approximate sense of a corporation whose fortune or prosperity should be left to the mercy of heaven. However, there are examples of times where they were quite happy to put their thumb on the scales of luck. Perhaps the most bizarre example of this I've come across is that as recently as the 1990s, they would hire or not hire people dependent on their birthdays. Nintendo of America's Perrin Kaplan recounted, "It was a different time. For example, I do remember that all of our birth dates were examined before we were hired in the 90s. They'd look at your birthday, and if you had one that was considered unlucky, you wouldn't have gotten hired, even though we worked in America." As for which birthdays these were, I've managed to find a list on Reddit purporting to rank these by so-called luck. Bizarrely to westernize, the 1st of April is the luckiest of dates, but I'm not quite sure how these are substantiated. Incidentally, Kaplan also recalls that Nintendo was superstitious in other ways, noting that it was also a very Feng Shui company, and it still is. The new NCL building was built that way. At Nintendo of America, we were going to expand into the buildings of another company called Eddie Bauer, and the buildings were angled. We walked over there with Mr. Iwata and Mr. Arakawa. They examined the buildings and even looked into the direction the water was flowing underneath, and then that building was deemed a big no. When they eventually remodeled Nintendo of America, it was done with the building facing the right way and built the right way for luck. Feng Shui, the Chinese art of arranging pieces in a living or workspace to create balance with the natural world, has even been incorporated into games such as the Feng Shui mechanic in Animal Crossing, whereby the player's luck can be increased by incorporating certain items or arranging them in certain ways in the living space in the game. It is pseudoscience at best, with its talk of energies, and yet both Feng Shui and the Japanese cousin concept Kanso, rooted in simplicity and Zen, are widely adopted and understood in Japan. And of course, this is not unusual to Japan. How many people in the West would avoid launching a product on Friday the 13th, or at least note to themselves that the breaking of a mirror is unlucky? The US president delayed a major tariff decision from the 1st of April to the 2nd of April to avoid April Fool's Day. Ironic, since in Japan, as I said, the 1st of April is reportedly an extremely lucky day. While in the UK Parliament, there are any number of bizarre parliamentary traditions believed to be important for good luck. One particularly interesting source of good and bad luck is from the concept of Rokuyo. Originally from China but popularized in Japan at the end of the 19th century, Rokuyo is a series of 6 days in which there are associations between particular days and even specific times of day with good and bad luck. For example, Butsumetsu is widely considered to be a bad luck day, rooted in the tradition that it's the day the Buddha died, and some Japanese shrines close their offices for the day. The calculation of the 6 days is a little tricky and based on the lunar calendar and follows strict rules. Now, Rokuyo has not always been popular and was even banned for a period, but like most of these traditions, they can appear quite sticky. The original Famicom was released on the lucky day of Taian, and there are other examples of Nintendo's major presentations and releases coinciding with times of good luck. But then again, both the Game Boy and the Wii U arrived in unlucky periods, while Nintendo's the 2nd of April presentation will be on Sensho, which is lucky in the morning and unlucky in the afternoon. Not ideal when the show will run at 10 p.m. in Japan. Overall, it seems unlikely, with so many other push and pull factors on their calendar, that these superstitious beliefs will have much of an impact on the running of the company, and it doesn't appear that these traditions affect Nintendo's major release choices, though perhaps the more superstitious in the company may have regretted launching the Wii U on Butsumetsu. Kyoto is also seen to be almost talismanic to the company. Note how the world of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom was modelled in terms of size on Kyoto, a place that Fujibayashi and his team knew very well indeed. While in Reggie Fils-Aimé's book, he noted that Satoru Iwata considered himself an outsider at the company because he, unusually for the company, was not a Kyoto native. This affects some regional customs. For example, Obon, the Japanese commemoration of the spirits of ancestors, takes place during the hot Japanese summer, but not all regions celebrate at the exact same time. However, Nintendo seems to follow the Kyoto traditional holidays. This is a traditional time for ghost stories, and some of the spooky traditions seen elsewhere in the world connected more to things like Halloween or the Day of the Dead. This might explain why the teases for Emio the Smiling Man through to the release of the game took place across July and August 2024, and the Obon Festival usually coincides with people taking time off, which probably explains why it is relatively rare to see a game during any of the first 4 weeks of August. Nintendo often has a late July release, the latest ever being the 29th of July's Xenoblade Chronicles 3 in 2022, at least for the Nintendo Switch, but after that, the earliest physical game release in the Switch era in August was on the 29th of August. In fact, Emio the Smiling Man and Astral Chain launched on the 29th and 30th of August respectively, and both have slightly supernatural overtones. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle also dropped on the 29th, but this was an Ubisoft release. The only oddity is the 17th of August 2022's digital entry Kirby Dream Buffet. I guess when the pink puffball needs feeding, he needs feeding. Lucky and unlucky numbers also persist, but Nintendo has generally been resistant to these. For example, 4 is often perceived to be unlucky in Japan, but Super Mario World in the West was named Super Mario Bros. 4 in Japan, and in recent years Pikmin 4 and Metroid Prime 4 both claimed the number, though given that both games experienced vast delays, perhaps the superstition was not without merit. 8, on the other hand, is a lucky number, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has certainly brought fortune, though it seems unlikely that this is why Nintendo opted for the numbering. While there is a lot of evidence that Nintendo has been superstitious in the past, it does seem like when it comes to their business decisions now, they remain level-headed and objective. It seems that their motto to leave luck to heaven has worked for them so far, and allowed them to create so many terrific gaming experiences. So let's cross our fingers and count our blessings on that front. Thank you for watching. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Do check out some of these videos on screen right now if you're interested, and I shall see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.